Hej, mijn naam is Lori en ik ben van Kansas en ik nu kwakse Dutch Schweizer against it. My community is Amish. I'm from the Amish church, and so in our area, in our church services, we usually use Pennsylvania Dutch and German mixed in the services. So one thing, Dutch is what we speak at home. In the church service, we usually have German, but naturally, what comes most naturally to me is Pennsylvania Dutch. Pennsylvania Dutch was my first language, and I was 4 or 5 when I learned to speak English before I went to school.
The first language I learned is Pennsylvania Dutch. I didn't speak any English the first few years of my life. When I was probably 6 or 7 is when I started speaking more English. Now, it was required when we went to school that we could speak only English, and I'm sure that my vocabulary there increased a lot. I don't remember what all I knew before 7 years old, but it wasn't much. We spoke Dutch at home all the time, and only English in school. And then in church, everything was in English in church. We moved to Southern Ohio. We moved out of an Amish community to a non-Amish community. We were the only Dutch-speaking families in that area. We still would talk Dutch at home as a family, but all our neighbors, all our friends were English-speaking. I look back after I was married, actually, and discovered this, that when my father spoke to me in Dutch, I replied in Dutch, Pennsylvania Dutch, but when Mom and I spoke, she would speak Dutch and I would speak English, something I didn't even realize. So I don't know what that factor, what caused that, what that factor was, but gradually more and more talked English.
My mom and dad speak Dutch, and they never taught us. I think they were going to, but it just never worked out. So they can share secrets at the dinner table, and we can't understand. So it did work out good for them. Yeah.
Now, we use Dutch. Celeste and I will speak Dutch to each other. It's very handy, because if we don't want our children to understand what we're saying, we will speak Dutch.
If I have children, then yes, I will teach them Pennsylvania Dutch, whether or not I am in the context where it's usually spoken or not. Even if I wouldn't be a part of a German-speaking church, I think I would still teach my children Pennsylvania Dutch. I see one exception for that, and that is if my children would be learning another language on top of English, like Spanish or something, living in a context where Spanish is spoken and the Pennsylvania Dutch would confuse them in learning 3 languages, then I might not teach my children Pennsylvania Dutch.
Now, when Celeste and I started dating, we always spoke English to each other. Dutch was kind of an everyday language. It seemed probably to me that it was more respectful to someone to speak English to them, even though we could have conversation in Dutch. And so then we got married. We always spoke English, never spoke Dutch. And of course we had children, and the Dutch in our community, or in our roots, was what we considered a very flat Dutch, and not grammatically beautiful, if you will. So we just never wanted to teach our children Dutch, probably because of that. It's a very, very lazy accent, if you will. That was in the area of our familiarity.
A lot of what I've heard of it is the accent when it comes into English, which is It's different in Pennsylvania and Ohio, but both are kind of especially in Ohio, it's a very I don't know what to say, monotone, lazy-ish accent. That's when it comes into the English. So as far as the language, it sounds okay. I don't know how it comes from that language, but the accent in English is very just making the sharp consonants soft, and your J's will be or harder. Your J's will be your CH's, and your TH's will be S's, and just kind of a accent that, yeah, that's different. So, I wish I could have learned it. I never did really want to until I got a job in Holmes County, and then I realized how useful it would be. So, yeah, that would have been something I would have liked to learn. To be bilingual a little earlier in life.
I regret that. I wish we would have taught our children Dutch, Pennsylvania Dutch, but no, we didn't, and it's a little hard to do it now.
I would want to teach my children Dutch simply because it's a part of my family, it's a part of my heritage. There's no spiritual reason behind it. It's just something that I really treasure. And I think for me, I don't think people have to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, but if you know it and you can easily teach your children it, I think it's a shame to lose a language. You don't necessarily have to gain it, but if you have it, why lose it?
Now, some of the phrases in Dutch that we use that don't make any sense in English, I think of tribbelnaas. Tribbelnaas would mean, in English, it would mean over and out, but it makes no sense because we would use tribbelnaas as in a term when we want to express that something is outlandish, or if someone would do something crazy, just a crazy act, we would say, oh, es ist tribbelnaas. Maybe something stupid, oh, es ist tribbelnaas. Maybe in the context of something horrible, being horrified by something, it may be used sometimes. Another one is Salep Dauk Nogmaal. Salep Dauk Nogmaal. I have no idea what that would mean in English, but we would also use it in a way similar to the tribbelnaas, maybe, but maybe if we would say, we'd be referring to someone as hopeless, or Salep Dauk Nogmaal, or something maybe really ridiculous. Oh, Salep Dauk Nogmaal, unthinkable or crazy. I don't know what it literally means. Salep, I'm not even sure what that means. It's probably a German meaning that is behind it. Dauk means day, and Nogmaal means another time.
Some words in Dutch that are interesting and fun to use are words like unverständig, which means sort of like really amazing or wonderful.
Another one term is unverständig. That's a term that literally means unbelievable, so that's an easier one to understand why we use it. But someone would hit a home run. Oh, es ist unverständig. It's unbelievable. Or again, something tragic. You would have, oh, es ist unverständig.
Vrees, which means sort of like a bother. Bother is, I guess, the only word I can really think of that describes that. Another one is verhudeld, which sort of means like bewildered or confused in that, yeah.
Not being able to speak Dutch would classify me or someone as an Englisher or an hoge. Englisher meaning a person that cannot speak Dutch, or a hoge, a high person, would be transliterated as high. And that would, in their minds, give a distinction that those people are not part of our culture. They're outsiders. and that makes it harder to relate to people.
Usually I speak English in any place where there are other English speakers, simply because we feel it'd be sort of rude to speak Dutch in an area where no one else can understand you.
Yeah, the Pennsylvania Dutch language identifies them as a group, as a people. Someone they know, they are of our people. And if they can speak the Pennsylvania Dutch. When I was in the U.S., I worked in a business of animal agriculture, and a lot of my customers were Amish, or are Amish, and that was a definite advantage to be able to communicate with them in Dutch. They really can relate. The Amish and the Dutch-speaking people will relate very well with someone who can speak their language, and so there's a deeper, if you will, deeper level of trust maybe. Certainly they're much more comfortable doing business with someone that can speak Dutch. Now, in the same situation, if I was not able to speak Dutch, it's going to be a little more challenging. It'll take more work to gain their trust and be able to relate to them in the way that they feel comfortable. I'm still part of the Mennonite culture, but not as much the Dutch language culture. But in that culture, it is really important to keep the Dutch language.
If the Amish keep on multiplying like they seem to be, then Pennsylvania Dutch will keep on, will not die away. Yet, I think it'll become more split between Amish and Mennonites. Fewer and fewer Mennonites are speaking Pennsylvania Dutch now, and there are also some Amish people who are losing the Pennsylvania Dutch. Yet at the same time, there are some who I know can hardly speak English. So there's, I don't think it'll die away, but I think it'll become more split between the Amish and the Mennonites. Fewer Mennonites will be able to speak Pennsylvania Dutch.
Future of Dutch, I don't know. I guess it's stuck around for a while. It seems like it's very isolated, very much it's definitely in the culture of those two communities, sort of Lancaster, Holmes County. It seems like I would think it wouldn't be around too long yet, would just be my thought, but I don't know. If it's just staying in that community.
I don't think the Dutch language is going to die. In the Amish community where I grew up, they are growing at a rapid rate, so fast that they would need to start 200 churches every year. Now, not all the children stay Amish, but they will keep retaining a lot of the Dutch language.
I think the language will die out because one thing is it seems to be getting more and more people, like my family, they didn't teach it to their kids. So some of my friends, they speak Dutch and their parents did, but a lot of friends I know, they didn't really learn Dutch. And I guess that would be a big thing, would be if you're teaching your children.
Does it have a future? Is it strong? Is it growing? I would say that it will be around. There will always be those people that will keep that as their language, and they'll pass it on to their children, and it will be, I think it'll stay. It'll probably become more of a minority than it already is. I don't think it will completely die out.